If you're one of those lawyers who's hit every milestone, the partnership, the income, the reputation, but somehow something still feels like it's missing. You're respected and you're highly competent, but you privately wonder whether all your sacrifices had been worth it. You feel the pull of the golden handcuffs, the lifestyle, the clubs, the obligations, the identity, and you start to notice that they're heavier than they used to be. Welcome to the Free Lawyer Podcast. I'm your host, Gary Miles. Picture an attorney in the corner office. Name embossed on the door. Right beside the words, managing partner. 3 major wins this quarter and another award on the shelf. And an income most people would consider the finish line of a whole career. From the outside, this person has arrived. Every box checked. Every milestone hit. The kind of success you would have described 20 years ago as everything that you are working toward. And every Sunday night, the same attorney sits with a wave of dread about Monday morning. Not the ordinary kind of Monday reluctance, something deeper, a low private question that never quite goes away. Is this really it? Is this what I gave everything for? If any part of that landed a little too close, if you felt yourself go still for just a second, I want you to hear this clearly before we go one step further. What you're feeling is not a personal failing. It's not weakness. And it's not ingratitude for everything you've built. It's a design flaw. A flaw in how our entire profession defines success. And here's the good news buried inside that. Once you can see the flaw, you can't unsee it. And what you can see, you can change. I'm Gary Miles. I spent 46 years in the law, most of them as a trial lawyer and a managing partner of my firm. I won 12 consecutive federal trials. And for a long stretch of that career, I was exactly the person I just described. Successful by every external measure, but inside, quietly running on empty. Today, I coach accomplished attorneys through the same passage I had to find my way out of. And here's my promise of the next 20 minutes. You will walk away understanding the difference between chasing success and building freedom. And you will have a handful of practices you can start this week to protect the very success you worked decades to earn. And if by the end this feels like your conversation, I would welcome one with you directly. A complimentary coaching call, no pitch. Just a real discussion about where you are, where you want to be, and how to get there. Everything you need is at GaryMiles.net, or there's a link in the show notes below. So let's get started. This is not about working less, and it's not about lowering your standards. That's not who you are, and it's certainly not what I'm encouraging. This is about optimizing the success you already have, so finally serves your life instead of swallowing it. So let's talk about that success ladder that leads nowhere. The ladder of success is real. The problem is where it's leaning. For me, top of my law school class, prestigious clerkship, respected firm, billed more hours, won cases, made partner, kept climbing. Every rung of that ladder is legitimate. And you have earned every one of them. You deserve it. But there's a very uncomfortable truth beneath the achievements. The high income, the reputation, the recognition, they don't reliably track with satisfaction or well-being. They don't give us the fulfillment and the freedom that we thought would come from that level of success. And I've seen too many accomplished lawyers, very successful lawyers, who inside are carrying private struggles, burnout, depression, unhealthy coping, maybe substance abuse, behind a very impressive exterior. So how does this happen? How do we achieve such success and feel so trapped? The interesting thing is, we build our own prison through the very traits that made us so successful. In the beginning, in law school, first years of our practice, we worked so hard, our standards were so high. Indeed, so many of us struggle with perfectionism or something close to it. We showed our dedication by being constantly available. And the harder we worked, the more we struggled for perfection, the more available we are immediately to clients and partners, the more successful we are. So our success reinforced that strategy of perfectionism and availability. But as time goes on and we have more clients and more responsibility, that strategy demands ever more of us to maintain. And eventually, we're trapped by the very achievements we built. The clients want only us. The associate needs to talk to us. The office manager needs our approval. Our partner wants our insight. And we become pulled in so many directions because we still try to be almost perfect, and we are always constantly available. That's how to serve our clients. And this is the key. The trap, the golden handcuff trap, did not form because you failed. It formed because you were so disciplined, so driven, and so committed. That's the key. The trap forms out of the very best of you and not the worst. And I know for me, I graduated first in my high school class, my college class, and my law school class. I had a wonderful federal clerkship in the U.S. District Court of Maryland. Very successful trial record. Became partner at a very young age. By every external measure, I was so successful. But underneath of it, I was feeling trapped. I was living in what I now call external authority. I was dependent on approval and achievements from things outside myself. If you've climbed that whole ladder, and at the top of the ladder the view somehow feels wrong in some way, the ladder wasn't the issue. It's time to look at what it's leaning against. If ladder isn't the problem, then what is? It comes down to one question really almost nobody asks. Where is your professional confidence actually coming from? And this is the key question. Whose voice decides whether you did well today? So the one concept that I find so many of us, including me, have struggled with is what I call external authority. We measure our worth by the opinions of others, the judge's reaction, the partner's nod, the client's approval, the next award. That feels like standards, but it's actually dependence. And they seem like good things, aren't they? To get a judge say you did a great job, or approval from your partner, or a client who says great job, winning an award. They're wonderful, aren't they? But we won't always get them. Sometimes we try a good case and the judge doesn't give us a positive reaction. The partners begin to take us maybe for granted and don't give us that compliment. Despite great work, the client is hard to please and voices disapproval. And what happens is, what comes around goes around. We get those sometimes and sometimes we don't. And sometimes we don't get those compliments and awards and gratification even when we actually deserve it. And so our success and our confidence is fleeting. Our confidence can be destroyed by the next unfavorable ruling by a judge who may not be right. So we actually become dependent on those factors outside of us over which we have no control whatsoever. So instead, I encourage my clients to focus on what I call internal authority. There, your confidence is built from what you actually control. The quality of your preparation, your dedication, your experience, your competence, your effort, your unwavering commitment to your client. When you operate there, the pressure drops because, and I found this out of my last trial, which I shockingly lost. I shouldn't have lost it, but my worth wasn't on trial. My worth was not on trial, and I handled that defeat because I knew I had done a very good job for my client despite the outcome. When a client makes an unreasonable demand, one that strikes you as ridiculous and annoying, or threatens to leave and pull his work, do you comply out of fear? Or do you calmly hold that boundary because you trust your judgment? And the answer to that question will reveal which operating system you're running on. See, your confidence should come from your competence, not from validation from people or sources outside yourself. I remember I had this employment discrimination case, an age case. Elizabeth Wilson was my client. And I had some great evidence. Of course, it was all inferential, it was all circumstantial. The other side moved for summary judgment. I wrote what I thought was a very powerful brief against it. And since the whole question was intent and I had such good inference of discriminatory intent, I should have won that motion for a summary judgment. It should have been denied and we should have gone to a trial. But the judge ruled against me. He granted summary judgment. My client's case was thrown out of court. And then the other side, to add insult to injury, requested attorney's fees in a very detailed brief. The judge did not grant them attorney's fees. But I was devastated for far too long because the outside result was not to my liking. It was very damaging to my self-confidence. And it took me all too long to get over that. And you know how I got over it? I had a good acquaintance who was a magistrate judge, and I told him that story. And he told me that that judge had granted summary judgment to every single employer defendant in every discrimination case ever assigned to that judge. Every single one was summary judgment for the employer. And I realized then that it wasn't a matter of my efforts. It didn't matter what I did. That judge was going to rule that way anyway. And I've been beating myself up because I had not gotten the validation from something outside myself, the ruling, to maintain my confidence. Instead, I should have focused on what a good job I did for my client. See, your confidence is only as stable as the ground beneath it. And when we're relying on compliments from others and approval from others, we don't own the ground underneath it. So move it onto the ground you do own. The ground of your preparation, the ground that you can control. And judge yourself on your dedication and your commitment, no matter what the outcome is. So if internal authority is the foundation, what's the next step? That foundation needs a structure built on it. So let's talk about what you actually build once your confidence sits on ground you own, what I call the 3 pillars. Everything I've said so far is probably easier to nod along to than it is to see honestly in your own work. So let's just take a little break to talk about this. I built a tool for that. It's the Attorney's Productivity Power Assessment, and it's free at GaryMiles.net. There's also a link in the show notes. In a few minutes, it will show you where you're running on external authority, where your energy is actually going, and where the biggest opportunity to reclaim your practice is hiding it. So take it before you finish this episode if you can. It only takes a couple minutes, and we'll make everything after this land differently. So let's talk about the 3 pillars of sustainable freedom. Success is something you chase, but freedom is something you build, and that's what I help my clients do. And I rely on these 3 pillars. The first is what I call authentic excellence. And it's a distinction really between perfectionism and professionalism. Perfectionism seeks approval through flawless performance, which of course we achieve very rarely. Professionalism respects your competence as being equal to anyone else's. And we shift the internal script from worrying, what if I make a mistake? What if the judge rules against me, to I'm thoroughly prepared for whatever emerges, and I'm dedicated to my client, and I'm going to put forth a good case no matter what happens. That's not positive thinking. It's telling yourself the truth about your preparation, and that's really the only thing that you can control. The second pillar is what I call sustainable excellence. So often we focus on hours and billing and tasks. And most productivity advice asks you to cram more into the hours. But I believe in energy over time. The better question is how to operate from clarity and strength rather than from a place of exhaustion. Taking breaks, strategic rest, it's not a luxury, it's a performance tool. And I also rely on systems over heroics. We can't do everything ourselves. That's how we get burned out. But to use templates and intake processes and SOPs and communication protocols, they let the practice run well, effectively, even when you're unavailable, even when you're on vacation. You will actually be able to take a vacation again. And those systems don't replace your expertise, but they leverage it, freeing you for the high stakes thinking that really only you can do. And I believe in boundaries that enhance service. Boundaries that allow you to focus in the morning to get work done. That batch your telephone calls and emails together so you're not constantly interrupting your important thought process to take a quick call, answer an email, or have a question. See, those clear boundaries will improve outcomes for your clients because you'll do your work faster and better because they let you work from strength instead of from desperation. And 4 decades of practicing taught me that the hard way. And finally, professional freedom, or what I call sustainable impact. We judge ourselves on activity. You know how often you go to a party and you ask someone how they're doing? Oh, I'm so busy. Like that's a badge of honor. Traditional success counts billable hours and output. But I believe the better focus is on impact. Freedom counts problems for your clients that you solved, relationships that you've built and strengthened, the legacy that you're building and leaving, what you'll be remembered by. See, impact carries much more weight and importance than mere activity. And it has a ripple effect. Every associate who watches you hold a boundary while delivering brilliant work learns that sustainable excellence is possible. And multiplying that is a kind of meaning that mere individual achievement can never achieve. I had the privilege and the opportunity to support and even chair for a period of time the Lawyers Assistance Program in Maryland. I saw both the damage that the stress can do to our profession, and I also saw the reality of recovery. And I had the amazing opportunity to help lawyers succeed and get well and become productive and have a life. And that rippled throughout their family, throughout our profession, throughout the community. So sustainable excellence is the third pillar in achieving professional freedom. So freedom is not a bigger version of success, but it's a different foundation. It's excellence that builds you up instead of uses you up. So we've named this trap, we found the shift, we framed the 3 pillars, but none of it changes anything until Monday morning. So how do you actually start? Not with a grand overhaul, but with some small repeatable practices. So let me give you just a few practices, simple steps you can change right now to help you build and transform from these small actions repeated. These aren't grand gestures you do once and put away, but little routines you can develop. The first is a closing ritual. So often we work and work and work until it's time to get out of there and we leave. And our mind is still ruminating and worrying about tomorrow. What will we do? All the things we have left to do. Take 5 minutes at the end of the day. Mentally note or write down the most important projects you have. Think about which ones you can do first thing in the morning and put the rest of them away. Make a decision before you leave what you're going to do in the morning and what you'll hold for another day. How does that help? It stops you from ruminating when you get home about work. And it also clarifies for you in the morning when you arrive what you're going to do first. And then before you open your email, before you get started working, when you arrive at the office, set your morning intention. Ask yourself, What impact do I want to create today instead of what must I complete? How can I better support my clients and staff today? And I believe in this simple practice. Review 3 of your past wins, acknowledge the preparation you've done, and say to yourself, you're prepared, you're capable, and you're focused on serving your client. And then dive into that one project you picked for that morning. The next simple step is focus on being present in high pressure moments. When you review documents, review them. When you're in court, be fully in court. Wherever you are, be present in the moment. Don't be thinking about something you need to do tomorrow or something you might have wondered about what you did in the past, but be present. And when you're with your family, be genuinely there. And if you find yourself mind wandering to the future or the past, draw yourself back to the present. Because presence lowers anxiety by grounding you in the one thing you can control, your current action. You can't control the outcome. You can't control the future. But you can control the present, and you can control your present action. In the evening, think about your day. Create what I call a wins journal. Write down 3 specific wins from the day, even if they're small. Just jot them in a binder or a journal, just words so you can remember them. And over time, that wins journal will be the very evidence that you base your internal authority on. When you begin to question your confidence or things are faltering, review that wins journal. Honestly, trust me, it works. And then change the scoreboard. Stop measuring only hours and outcomes and revenue. Start tracking your energy levels during the day. The quality of relationships with your client, how you slept at night, how much time you spent in important strategic thinking rather than reactive firefighting. And in your presence at home, that's what really matters. So let me leave you with 3 honest questions that I'd love you to think about. When you picture your professional future, do you see yourself thriving? Or do you fantasize about escaping law altogether? If you could restructure any part of your practice with no financial consequences, what would you change tomorrow morning? And finally, when did you last feel genuine excitement about your work? Not relief that that hard case is finally over, but real passion for your practice. Waiting is not a good step. The attorneys who postpone this step keep waiting for a better time that never comes. We always think, oh, when things slow down. But the demands never ease on their own. But the real cost is not some disaster looming ahead. It's simpler and quieter than that. It's time. It's freedom. Every week you run on a foundation that doesn't serve you is a week of presence, energy, and freedom you'll never get back. You've already proven you can build anything you decide to build. The only question is whether you start now or you start a year from now. And a year is a year. You don't need a new career. You're very good at what you do. What you need is a new foundation. And you can start laying it before you go to bed tonight, which brings us all the way back to that attorney in the corner office. And the one thing I most want you to carry out of this episode, I want to tell you something I wish someone had told me 20 years earlier. For most of my career, I believed the handcuffs were locked, that the income, the obligations, the identity I had built were a cage I had to live inside. I thought the only choices were to keep grinding or to walk away from everything that I'd worked for. But I was wrong. The handcuffs were never locked. They never had been. I just never thought to check because the trap was built for my best qualities, my dedication, my commitment, my constant availability, not for my worst. My discipline, my drive, my commitment had created the trap. The very things that made me so good at what I do were the things that kept me stuck. So if you're that attorney in that corner office, dreading Monday and wondering whether this is just how it is now, hear me. It doesn't have to be that way. You have a choice. You spent your whole career serving other people with extraordinary, incredible excellence. It's time to serve yourself with that same excellence. If this was your conversation, let's keep it going. I offer a complimentary coaching call. No pitch, no pressure. Just an honest look at where you are and what's possible. You can book it at GaryMiles.net. If you like the fuller map, check out my book, Breaking Free. I talk about the 12 prisons of the mind and the 12 keys to unlock them. It's also on my website. So until next time, this is Gary Miles. Practice law with purpose and live your life with freedom.